Okay, gotta admit, the whole idea of like reaching awakening, it's always felt kind of like chasing a unicorn or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
how do you even like begin to grasp such a huge concept?
right.
But, luckily you shared these excerpts from dhammatalks.org on like concentration and discernment, and
Yeah,
they're supposed to be like the wings, to get you there.
yeah.
I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it all. So luckily I have our expert here to help unpack it.
Yeah, these teachings can be complex for sure, but that's also kind of what makes them so fascinating,
Yeah.
right?
Good to hear. Okay, so the text talks about like jhana and discernment as being essential for this whole awakening thing.
Uh-huh.
Can we start there? Like, what
Yeah,
even are those? I'm picturing jhana as this super focused, blissful state.
right.
Like you're in the zone, but like for your soul,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, jhana does refer to these states of really deep meditative absorption
Okay.
where the mind becomes incredibly still and concentrated.
Right.
And discernment is the wisdom that kind of arises from that stillness, that ability to see like the true nature of reality,
Okay.
free from illusions and stuff.
Okay, so John is like, get that calm, focused mind. And discernment is like, now use that focus to get a clear picture of how things really are.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
but hold on. The text jumps right into this whole debate
Yeah.
about whether you even need jhana to get to awakening at all. So is it like optional?
Well, there are like differing viewpoints within Buddhist thought on this, which can get a little confusing.
Right.
The text lays out three main perspectives.
Okay.
Some say jhana isn't necessary at all. Others believe it's only needed for the higher levels of awakening.
Okay.
And then there's the view that jhana is like crucial for all levels of awakening.
Gotcha.
And the text seems to side with this last viewpoint,
Okay.
citing evidence from the Pali Canon and the 8 factors of stream entry,
Okay.
which includes right concentration, which is defined as jhana.
So the text is saying no hana, no awakening.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, so then it goes into this whole thing about the commentaries having a totally different definition of hana.
Right.
It's like, is everyone even on the same page here?
Yeah, that's a good point. It can feel like they're talking about apples and oranges.
Totally.
So the commentaries, they focus primarily on kasina meditation,
Okay.
which involves staring at an external object, until you get this like mental imprint of it, like a visual after image.
Mm.
And they consider reaching this countersign as evidence of attaining jhana.
Hmm.
The problem is they try to apply this framework to all meditation techniques, even breath meditation,
Right.
which doesn't really fit.
And the text calls them out on that, right? Like saying there's no basis in the original teachings for needing these countersigns.
Exactly, yeah.
Plus, if breath meditation was only for like super advanced folks,
Right.
why would the Buddha teach it to everyone? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. So the text is arguing that while the commentaries might be right about their version of jhana not being like essential,
Okay.
true awakening, as the Buddha described it, requires that genuine jhana
Okay.
as defined in the original teachings.
All right, that clears things up a bit. But how does jhana, in the sense that the text is talking about, how does it actually lead to that deeper discernment that's needed for awakening? Like, it's not just like sit in blissful meditation and poof, you've got the secrets of the universe, right?
Well, not magically, no, but jhana does provide a really stable platform
Okay.
from which you can observe your mind with incredible clarity.
Okay.
It's not just spacing out.
Right.
It's cultivating a really profound stillness
Right.
that allows you to, step back and see the inner workings of your mind
Okay.
in a way that's just impossible in our usual distracted state.
So it's like creating a mental laboratory
Exactly.
where you can study all your own thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. Okay, but how does that lead to discernment?
Yeah.
To seeing the true nature of reality?
So that's where the 5th factor of right concentration comes in.
Okay.
Reflecting on the very nature of jhana itself.
Okay.
You step back from the object of your concentration, and you gain insight into the process of causation,
Okay.
like how mental states arise and pass away, how craving and attachment fuel the cycle of suffering.
So it's not enough to just experience jhana. You have to analyze it.
Precisely.
Got it.
The text uses the example of Sariputta,
Okay.
who was a prominent disciple of the Buddha known for his wisdom.
Right.
And he was able to analyze the jhana factors, like with incredible detail.
Wow.
He meticulously broke down each component of jhana,
Okay.
understanding how it arose, how it was sustained, and how it eventually dissolved. And through this really deep understanding, he developed a sense of dispassion,
Okay.
even towards jhana itself.
Wait, dispassion towards jhana, but
Yeah.
isn't that supposed to be this, like, blissful, amazing state?
Yeah.
Why would you want to detach from that?
Because even jhana, as blissful as it may be, it's still impermanent.
Okay.
And ultimately, it can't provide, like, lasting happiness.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool, for develop wisdom, but it's not the final destination.
So even those seemingly positive states are still something to let go of on the path to awakening.
Exactly.
It's kind of like realizing that even the most delicious meal
Right.
eventually loses its appeal.
Exactly.
You can enjoy it,
Yeah.
but you don't cling to it.
Right.
All right, so we've talked about how jhana supports discernment, but does it work the other way around? Can discernment actually help you get better at jhana?
Absolutely. The text describes how discernment supports jhana on, like, two levels. A practical one and a, let's say, more transcendental level.
Okay, you've really piqued my curiosity now. Let's break that down.
Okay.
So what does that mean in practical terms?
Okay, so on a practical level, think of it like this. As you develop deeper insight into, like, the nature of reality,
Okay.
you can start to identify and drop those unnecessary factors that are kind of hindering your jhana practice.
Okay.
It's like that analogy in the text about the forms they use to pour cement.
Okay.
Once the cement hardens, you don't need the forms anymore, right?
So it's like you're shedding those mental habits or techniques.
Exactly.
That might have been helpful in the beginning,
Yeah.
but are actually holding you back from progressing further.
Right.
I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes I get so attached to a certain meditation technique that I'm afraid to try anything new,
Right?
even if it might be more beneficial.
Yeah, and that's where discernment comes in.
Right.
It allows you to see clearly what's beneficial, what's not, what's supporting your growth, and what's keeping you stuck.
So basically, discernment helps us to declutter our minds, streamline our practice,
Exactly.
make it more efficient and effective. But what about that transcendental level? That sounds way more mysterious
Right.
and intriguing.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So the text describes how profound discernment, the kind that leads to awakening,
Okay.
it actually gives rise to a, like, special type of jhana
Mm.
called the fruit of gnosis.
Fruit of gnosis. Whoa.
It's like a glimpse into the unconditioned state of freedom
Okay.
that's usually only fully experienced, at death,
Oh, wow.
but is accessible while still alive.
So like a preview of what full liberation feels like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a taste of that ultimate freedom and peace that, Buddhists talk about.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. But the text also mentions different types of individuals, right? When it comes to jhana and discernment.
Right.
Like, not everyone's starting at the same point.
Yeah, exactly. The text in AN 4.94, it outlines 4 types of people.
Okay.
Some have strong tranquility, but they lack insight,
Right.
while others, they have keen insight,
Okay.
but they struggle with tranquility.
Gotcha.
And then, there are those who have neither.
Right.
And finally, those who have cultivated both jhana and discernment.
Okay.
The point is, it's important to honestly assess where we fall on this spectrum.
Right.
And then seek guidance from those who, have the qualities that we lack.
So if you're super analytical but struggle with meditation, finding a teacher who can help you cultivate that deep stillness
Right.
could be a game changer.
Exactly.
And vice versa, right? Like if you're great at meditating but have trouble, applying the teachings to your life, you might need to focus more on developing wisdom and discernment.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
And recognizing that these two qualities work together
Okay.
to, propel us towards that ultimate freedom.
And speaking of different approaches,
Yeah.
the text also describes 2 distinct paths to arahantship, which is like the final stage of awakening.
Right.
I'm starting to see a theme here. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of journey.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
So AN 4.170, it describes the paths of insight preceded by tranquility
Okay.
and tranquility preceded by insight.
Okay.
And the end result is the same, complete liberation from suffering.
Right.
But the approach, it might differ depending on the individual.
So it's like there are multiple trails
Exactly.
leading to the summit of the same mountain.
That's a great way to put it.
You might take different routes, but the view from the top is the same.
Exactly.
Breathtaking panorama.
And to illustrate this point even further,
Okay.
there's this really compelling analogy in AN 11.10
Okay.
that compares the different types of jhana
Okay.
to a thoroughbred horse
Oh, yeah.
versus an unbroken colt.
Thoroughbred horse versus the unbroken colt. Yeah, that one really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's such a vivid image.
It is, right. So the unbroken colt, it represents that attachment to, mundane objects, desires. It's constantly distracted. Its mind fixated on, fleeting pleasures.
Right.
Much like our own minds, right?
Yeah.
How they get caught up in the barley grain of our desires.
Right, whereas the thoroughbred, even when tied to the feeding trough,
Right.
it's aware of its situation, responsive to its trainer's commands.
Exactly.
It's not bogged down by those, base desires. It's focused, present.
Exactly. And this represents that liberated state of absorption, a jhana that isn't fueled by, clinging or craving. It's a state of focused attention, but it's not fixated on anything in particular.
Right.
It's free and responsive, ready to engage with the world in a skillful and compassionate way.
That analogy really clarifies the difference between, like, getting lost in meditative bliss
Right.
and using meditation as a tool to cultivate, true freedom and wisdom.
That's it. It's not about escaping reality.
Right.
It's about transforming our relationship with it.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and that's really the core message here, right? Jhana and discernment, they're not separate practices.
Right.
They're interwoven aspects of the path to awakening, each supporting and enriching the other.
So to recap what we've covered so far, we've explored the, intertwined nature of jhana and discernment, the debate surrounding jhana's necessity for awakening,
Right?
and the different paths one can take to reach that ultimate goal of enenaship.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, but it's already making more sense.
That's great to hear.
Okay, but before we move on,
Yeah.
there's one question that's really sticking with me.
Okay.
If jhana, as described in the text, can be attained independently of any perception or object, what does that say about, the true nature of our minds?
That's a profound question.
Yeah.
And one that I encourage you to contemplate further.
Okay.
If we can achieve a state of deep absorption without clinging to any particular thought
Right.
or feeling or sensation, what does that reveal about the underlying ground of our being? What is the true nature of this awareness that can experience such a state of freedom?
Wow, that's something I'll definitely be pondering. It's like you've opened up a whole new doorway in my understanding. But I think that's a perfect place to pause for now.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I need some time to process all these insights.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
We'll pick up where we left off in our next segment.
Okay, sounds good.
Where we'll explore some fascinating examples and specific techniques described in the text
Okay.
that can help you cultivate both jhana and discernment in your own practice.
Okay, looking forward to it.
So stay tuned because the journey to awakening continues.
Great. Okay, I've had some time to let all that stuff from the last segment sink in. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go deeper.
Okay.
I keep thinking about how profound jhana can be and how it can even lead to a glimpse of that fruit of gnosis.
Right.
But honestly, it still feels kind of out of reach.
Yeah.
How do you actually cultivate jhana and discernment in a way that leads to awakening? Is there some secret formula or technique?
I understand. I understand the curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that, awakening isn't like a destination you reach by following a set of instructions,
Yeah.
Like assembling IKEA furniture or something.
Right.
It's more about cultivating certain qualities of mind,
Oh,
a
okay.
way of being in the world.
Okay, so it's not about ticking boxes or following a recipe.
Right.
But the text does mention some specific practices, right?
It does, yeah.
I remember something about using jhana itself as an object of contemplation,
Yeah,
leading to even deeper insight.
exactly. So the text emphasizes that instead of simply resting in the blissful state of jhana,
Okay.
we can actually use that state as a foundation for further investigation.
Okay.
It's about applying that fifth factor of right concentration
Right.
in a very practical way.
So it's not just about experiencing jhana, it's about analyzing it.
That's it.
I'm picturing it like a scientist observing an experiment under a microscope.
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
You step back and you observe those very factors that constitute jhana. The rapture, the pleasure, the concentration, the equanimity.
Okay.
And through this careful observation,
Yeah.
you start to see their impermanent nature,
Right.
their conditionality. You realize that even these blissful states
Okay.
are still subject to change,
Right.
and they can't provide lasting happiness.
That makes sense. I guess it's easy to get caught up in like the bliss of jhana and think, oh, I've arrived.
Right, yeah.
But if you're truly seeking awakening, you can't cling even to that.
Exactly. And that understanding, that willingness to let go, even of those, really refined states of mind,
Yeah.
that's what opens up the path to true liberation.
Okay.
It's about like peeling back those layers of attachment, not just to like the external world, but also to those internal states that we might cling to as, a source of happiness.
So it's like realizing that even the most delicious dessert eventually loses its appeal.
Yeah, great analogy.
You can savor it.
Yep.
But you don't like grasp at it or let it define your happiness.
Exactly. Yeah, it really captures the essence of what it means to develop dispassion, not just toward external objects, but also toward those internal states that, we might crave or cling to.
And that's where true freedom lies, right?
Yeah.
In that space of non-clinging where
Yeah.
you're not defined by any experience, internal or external.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that true happiness comes from within, from a place of like inner peace and freedom
Yeah.
that can't be shaken by, the ever-changing conditions of life.
That makes me think about that analogy we were discussing earlier, the one about the cement forms.
Right.
The text talks about how discernment helps you like refine your jhana practice
Yeah.
by identifying and dropping those like unnecessary factors
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
hindering your progress, like those forms, once the cement has hardened.
Right. Yeah, that's a crucial point, as we progress in our practice.
Yeah.
We might find that certain techniques or mental supports
Right.
that were, really helpful in the beginning,
Yeah.
they're no longer necessary.
Right. It's like shedding those training wheels once you've learned to ride a bike.
Exactly.
But sometimes it feels scary to let go of those supports, even if we know they're, holding us back.
Yeah.
I imagine it takes a certain level of honesty and self-awareness
Right.
to like recognize those ingrained habits
Yeah.
and be willing to let them go.
You're absolutely right. It requires a willingness to really look at ourselves honestly
Yeah.
and to question those things we might be clinging to, even if they, feel comfortable or familiar.
And that's where discernment comes in, right?
Exactly.
It gives us the clarity to see what's truly beneficial and what's not.
Exactly. It's like having, a wise friend who can point out those blind spots we might have.
Right.
And help us to see things more clearly.
Right.
And as we develop that discernment, we become more skillful in, choosing those practices that support our growth
Yeah.
and letting go of those that no longer serve us.
I'm particularly intrigued by that fruit of gnosis,
Mm,
that supermundane jhana that arises from profound insight.
right.
Is there anything we can do to like specifically cultivate that?
Mm.
Or is it just something that like happens spontaneously
Yeah.
when all the conditions are right?
That's a question that, has fascinated practitioners for centuries.
Right.
And while the text doesn't offer like a step-by-step guide,
Right.
it does highlight certain practices that can, create a fertile ground
Okay.
for this kind of insight to emerge.
So it's not like there's a magic formula or technique,
Right.
but there are things we can do to make ourselves more like receptive
Yeah.
to this experience.
Exactly.
What kind of practices are we talking about?
So the text emphasizes the importance of contemplating the arising and passing away of phenomena,
Okay.
recognizing their, impermanent and interdependent nature.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a deep understanding of impermanence, not just as a concept, but as like a lived experience.
So it's about paying close attention to like the ever-changing flow of our experience.
Exactly.
Noticing how thoughts, feelings, and sensations, arise and dissolve constantly in flux.
Cecily. And through this mindful observation,
Yeah.
we start to see through the illusion of a solid, unchanging self.
Right.
We recognize that everything is in process. Everything is impermanent,
Right.
including ourselves.
And that understanding can be incredibly liberating
Yeah.
because it allows us to like let go of our cling to those fixed ideas of, who we are and what we need to be happy.
Yes, it's about recognizing the emptiness of all phenomena. Not in like a nihilistic sense,
Right.
but in the sense of seeing their ultimate lack of inherent existence.
And that's where the freedom lies, right? In recognizing that nothing is permanent, nothing is truly ours to hold on to.
Exactly.
But if we can't cling to anything, what's left? What's the ground of our being?
That's a wonderful question, and one that, the fruit of gnosis can help us answer. It's a state of like effortless absorption, free from all clinging and craving.
Yeah.
A taste of true liberation that reveals the true nature of awareness itself.
It sounds like a truly remarkable state of being.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's not something that's easily attained. Does everyone who practices jhana and discernment eventually experience this fruit of gnosis?
It's certainly not, a quick fix
Right.
or a guarantee.
Right.
It requires dedication, patience,
Yeah.
and a willingness to continually, deepen our understanding and refine our practice.
Right.
And while not everyone may experience it, in this lifetime, the pursuit itself is transformative.
The text is very clear that, both jhana and discernment are necessary for awakening.
Right.
But do you think it matters which one we, prioritize in our practice? Is it better to start with, deep concentration or with cultivating insight?
That's an interesting question. Remember those two paths to arahantship we discussed earlier?
Right.
Insight preceded by tranquility and tranquility preceded by insight.
Right, right.
Both paths lead to the same destination, but they might, resonate more with different individuals,
Okay.
depending on, their natural inclinations.
So it's like some people might naturally gravitate towards developing, deep concentration first,
Exactly.
while others might find it easier to cultivate insight through, analytical study and contemplation.
Exactly. And there's no, right or wrong way to approach this.
Right.
The key is to find a path that feels aligned with, your own temperament and inclinations.
And to be honest with ourselves about which areas we need to work on, if we're great at meditating,
Right.
but struggle with, applying those insights to our daily lives.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to focus more on developing wisdom and discernment.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's all about recognizing our strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And finding a balanced approach that allows us to cultivate, both wings of awakening.
One thing I really appreciate about this text is that it doesn't, shy away from the complexities of the path.
Yeah.
It acknowledges, the challenges, the different perspectives, the nuances of practice. It feels very honest and relatable.
I agree. It doesn't pretend to, have all the answers or offer a simplistic, one-size-fits-all approach to awakening.
Right.
It encourages us to, engage with the teachings in a critical and discerning way
Yeah.
to question our assumptions
Yeah.
and to find what truly works for us.
And that's what makes this journey so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's not about blindly following rules or techniques.
Right.
It's about cultivating a deep understanding of ourselves and the nature of reality. And using that understanding to transform our lives. It feels more like an exploration than, a rigid set of instructions.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's precisely what makes this path so, enriching and rewarding.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to deepen my own practice. After exploring these teachings, they're challenging for sure, but they also feel incredibly empowering.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, this is an ongoing journey, one that requires, ongoing effort, reflection, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Yeah.
But the rewards are truly immeasurable.
Right.
Freedom from suffering, genuine happiness, and a profound understanding of, the nature of reality.
It's crazy to think that these Buddhist teachings on jhana and discernment, they're over 2,500 years old.
I know, right?
And yet they feel so relevant to our lives, even today,
Yeah.
especially with all the distractions and information overload, our minds are just going nonstop all the time.
Right, yeah. It's almost as if the Buddha, anticipated this very challenge. He often described the human mind as like a wild elephant, constantly restless, agitated,
Wow.
Easily distracted by sights, sounds, and thoughts.
So we've basically been dealing with the same mental chatter for centuries.
Pretty much, yeah.
No wonder it feels so hard to find that, inner stillness.
Yeah, it's a universal struggle.
Right.
But the good news is, the Buddha also gave us a path
Right.
to tame that wild elephant,
Yeah.
to cultivate a state of inner peace and clarity.
Right.
And that path, it involves both jhana and discernment.
It's like we're training our minds to be more like that thoroughbred horse, right?
Exactly.
Focused, responsive,
Right.
not easily swayed by, distractions or fleeting desires.
That's it.
But how do we actually, apply these practices beyond just sitting on the meditation cushion? You know what I mean? Can we bring those qualities of dana and discernment into our, everyday lives?
Absolutely. The principles of mindfulness and awareness, that underlie both jhana and discernment,
Right.
they can be integrated into every aspect of our lives.
Okay.
It's about bringing that same quality of mindful observation that we cultivate, in meditation.
Right.
And bringing it into our daily interactions and experiences.
So, like, for example, if you're stuck in traffic and you're starting to feel that, road rage bubbling up,
Right.
you could just take a moment to pause,
Yeah.
take a breath,
Uh-huh.
and observe those feelings of frustration
Right.
without, getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's about creating that space, between the stimulus and our reaction.
Okay.
That gap where we can choose a more skillful response.
I can see how that would be so helpful, not just with road rage, but like all sorts of challenging situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What about making decisions? Can discernment help us with that?
Absolutely. When we develop cleared seeing,
Okay.
we're better able to distinguish between what's truly beneficial
Right.
and what's harmful, both for ourselves and, for others.
Okay.
We can make choices that are aligned with our values, that contribute to our own well-being
Right.
and the well-being of those around us.
So it's not just about cultivating like inner peace.
Right.
It's about using that wisdom to actually make a positive impact on the world.
Precisely. Jhana and discernment aren't just about, personal enlightenment.
Okay.
They're about transforming our relationship with ourselves,
Mm.
with others, and with, the world as a whole.
One thing that I really appreciate about these teachings is like the emphasis on personal responsibility. It's not about waiting for some external force
Right.
to, save us or enlighten us. It's about, cultivating our own inner resources and taking ownership
Exactly.
of our own like awakening.
The Buddha said, you yourselves must strive. The Buddhas only point the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such an empowering message.
Right.
It means that we have the potential to liberate ourselves from suffering,
Right.
realize our full potential, not through, blind faith
Yeah.
or external authority, but through our own efforts and our own insights.
It's like we're all on this incredible journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And jhana and discernment are the tools that help us navigate that journey and reach our destination.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's a journey that's, worth taking,
Yeah.
even if it's challenging at times.
For sure.
Because the rewards, they're truly immeasurable. Freedom from suffering, genuine happiness, and a profound understanding of the, nature of reality.
Well, I'm definitely feeling pretty inspired to like deepen my own practice.
That's great to hear.
After exploring these teachings, it's incredible how these ancient practices can still speak to us
Yeah.
and offer such like profound insights into the human condition.
I agree. And I think the most important takeaway from our deep dive today is that awakening isn't some, distant goal reserved for like a select few.
Right.
It's a possibility that's open to all of us.
Yeah.
If we're willing to cultivate the qualities of jhana and discernment in our own hearts and minds.
And that's a really hopeful message, right? That no matter where we are on our journey, we all have the potential to awaken to our true nature and live a life just freedom and purpose.
Right. So to everyone listening, let's keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep opening ourselves to the transformative power of these ancient teachings.
I love that. And until next time, keep diving deep.